Hey everyone, Josh here from the NYC Godcast, where we offer wacky wisdom weekly from God's Word. On today's episode, we're talking about friendship and just what a good friend can mean for your faith. So, stay tuned. Well, today we are wrapping up our series on resetting relationships, and it's really been a challenging month. One that I think all of us need in some way or another. Welcome to the table again, Miguel.
Thank you for having me back.
We are nice and cozy today, but we're grateful to have him with us. So this month we've looked at reasons for resetting relationships. We've looked at pushing the reset button on relationships. We've looked at being a flaw-focused person in a relationship. And today we're going to take a look at farmyard friendship. You guys had one job. One job only. Today we're going to take a look at farmyard friendship.
Quack, quack, quack.
Like an angry cow.
I can guess.
He was the angry cow? I think you mistaken.
He was a duck. He quacked.
I quacked.
Okay. Not as fun as that was. CJ, my button stopped. Anyhow, so the first question for you guys is this. How would you guys define friendship?
Well, there's so many different levels to a friendship, so it's kind of hard to say exactly what a friendship is, because you can have like a casual friend, that's a friendship, and then someone who's much closer, you wouldn't define those two relationships the same, but they're both friendships.
I would define a friendship as something that is meeting a need in your life. Like everyone's different in your life, but it's meeting a need.
Actually, I could just go home now. I'm not needed here. Any other thoughts?
She did a good job.
That's
good. Listen, you don't get a chair if you don't contribute. I don't know why she's here.
So she just gave 2 thumbs up.
It's sort of funny. She's here for Jamie's.
I have to.
Emotional support.
You're her emotional support dog.
You mood, so you're a cow. My emotional support cow.
I give you a
So
dog.
friendship is sort of one of those funny words that we all like know what it is, but we don't know how to define it. You know those words that are just like that in between. So there's something about friendship that's just it's instinctive and it's natural to all of us. We all need it. Even if you're introverted, if you find the right people, you'll feel like you two are the perfect example of this. We don't need to explain it anymore.
We're not introverts.
Yeah, she is, and you find her with her, and she's fine. She's a normal person again. Otherwise, she's
So sweet.
I mean that in the worst way possible. So Juliet is 4, and she loves nothing more than to make friends. Like that's like her favorite pastime, her favorite hobby completely. If we go to the park or the playground or something, guaranteed before we get out of the car, her first question is going to be, can I make a friend today? And in fact, it's gotten to an unhealthy level where me and mom have to say no. Because she just will befriend every tree and every squirrel and every person. Like it's gotten unhealthy. But that's always going to be her first question. She's going to ask, can I make a friend? And so there's this God-given natural need within all of us for friendship and for community. Like it's totally a biblical thing. And yet, although all of us may need some form of friendship, the interesting thing is that we a lot of times misunderstand the point of a friendship, right? So this week, as I was preparing for the podcast, I kind of chuckled, but I was kind of shocked at the same time at a discovery I made in the Bible about friendship. So we've talked many times before about the Greek word in the New Testament. I think you had the podcast last February on phileoship. Was that you? So we've talked a lot about the New Testament word phileo and how it's brotherly love. We think of Philadelphia, and so it's this brotherly love. So that's the New Testament word for friendship. In the Old Testament, in the Hebrew, they use the word rhea. You guys say rhea better than you can act as a farm animal. Can you say rhea in a farm animal accent?
I actually would have pronounced that rhea.
No, that's if you're Jamaican mind. And we're not. So, rhea is the word for friend in the Old Testament. So, what is rhea? Well, the word gives the idea of a pasture or somewhere to graze or feed on. Is that odd to anybody else? That is how the Old Testament defines a friend, a pasture or a place to feed on. That's uncomfortable.
Wow.
No nibbling among friends.
That's like saying you hang out at their house and graze on their food.
Yeah, the fridge is your pasture.
Yeah, fair enough.
So what is a friend? It's a person you graze or feed on, according to the Old Testament. Now, I don't know about you guys, but truth be told, I don't have a lot of needs for pastures in my life. Like, I don't a lot of times get down on all fours and eat from the ground.
Right. You don't?
Not often.
I don't ever.
It's happened.
It's happened, but not often. On my good days, I try not to do that anymore. So it's not often you find me bent over grazing on grass in my spare time. And yet, if I were a sheep, suddenly pastures become pretty important stuff.
Yep.
Suddenly pastures sustain my life. They bring life to me. They provide protection and sustenance. They provide a place to lay down. They provide refreshment and rejuvenation. Enter true friendship. That's what friendship is.
Mm-hmm.
So do you guys have an instance of a friend or someone that comes to mind who has been someone who has let you graze or feed off of their life?
I need more clarification because I don't eat people.
Nope. I don't know anyone like that.
I was thinking of King Nebuchadnezzar as you were talking about grace.
That's great. That's
going
great.
deep. That's going
that
deep.
lesson took a whole turn, didn't it? That's funny. So Kevin needs clarification.
Well, I think
yeah.
so. For clarification,
I like how you're clarifying Josh's.
Yes.
I expected nothing else. I just looked that way.
That's not how this works. And so, the way that I think that this would be seen as is like I go to her and she fills a need that I have. Does that make sense? So, like, if I'm going through something, there's been several times in my life that I've had to go to her in, happy times when, I want to be excited with it. But also, I needed to go to her to have her slap me upside the head to tell me that I was wrong in something.
Moments, I feel like.
I know, right? And so, it's more of you get what you need from her. Does that make sense? From your friend.
And I guess that's how I would take, like, for a sheep, what is a pasture for a sheep? Well, it's a place to, exactly what you just said, it's a place that fulfills a need. Whether it's, we think of verses like Psalms 23, makes me lie down in green pastures. So a place of safety, a place
I
of
do sleep on your couch a lot.
a place of where you can be rest and rejuvenated, a place where you can eat.
Yes.
Or be refreshed. And so that's what a friendship is supposed to be, is a person who brings all of those things to you. Does that help? Just not yes. Yeah, I thought it would.
So, I mean, I'm sure I'm the only one who, I don't know, got this the wrong way. Guys, help me out here in the comments if you don't understand what he just said. But anyway, so it's like someone like that, they're filling a need. So you're like a confident, like someone you can confide in and go to. And yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right.
So
I'll buy that cheap.
So does anyone come to mind for you guys? Like, obviously you two are, let's make the rest of us
I've
sick
never
of
seen this
table.
woman in my life.
But like, I guess the thing that kind of got me this week is that is, according to the Old Testament, that is biblical friendship. Like that is literally what their word, when they would call each other Araya, they would call each other a pasture or a place to graze on awkwardly.
You are a plot of land.
You are a fluffy green plot of field is what you are.
Come no.
And
That's going to be on your next card.
Yeah, Hallmark card right there.
but in my life, like I have a lot of friends, but like, and I feel like I hopefully am a friend to a lot of people, but like, am I that? Am I providing a need? Like you said, am I actually bringing something to their life they wouldn't have elsewise? So I don't know. I was convicted by that. Maybe no one else is. But.
I think, well, I guess let me explain the reason why I'm here, right? This series really spoke to me, and I've never asked you, hey, can I be on the podcast, right? But this one really spoke to me, mainly because when we think about relationships, you think about, who am I going to marry or who am I going to...
Right.
But friendship was the first thing that came to my mind. Yeah. And as someone who has ruined many friendships just because of who I am, when I gave my life to Christ, I found myself now being in a place where I really wanted a friend. And I was both Amanda and I were looking for a friend, but because I was raised in this world, the things that I was looking for in a friend was not what God gave me.
Right.
Yes.
I was seeking someone that I would have common interest things. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's what I was seeking for. What I could get out of a friendship. Not something, someone that I would need. I was looking for wants.
Right.
And so we were praying, both Amanda and I, I'm gonna make us sound sad, right? But we were looking for friends, right? we were looking for friends, and it's not like we didn't have people that loved us, but we moved back here to the state of Ohio. And all the friends that we had either had busy lives, they had gotten married, and now we were at a point where it's like, we're, even though we have each other, we need more.
Right.
So as introvert as I am, I was looking for someone that I could be a friend with.
Yep.
And so, long story short, we began coming here to Sand Hill, and even though we were part of God's family, we still felt alone.
Yeah.
And that's something that we were praying for, like, Lord, we need friends. And so the Lord placed in my life someone that outside, which is the most important thing, but outside of Jesus Christ and outside of the fact that we have, a similar family structure, we both have, a child that was born around the same time, we are as different as night and day. We don't have the same interest. We don't even, like the same things. But I find that this person feels a need in me because the first thing that is there is the main thing that's coming is Jesus Christ.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I forgot your question. I forgot your question.
Well, I think you answered it. Do you have someone who is that? Like, and I mean, that's exactly what you were saying.
Long story short, yes.
Yes. So I guess this is kind of where we're at. So we've talked about marriage some this month. We've taled about parent. I think the first episode we had several kinds of relationships. Jamie was kind of a blanket statement on relationships. But we haven't really talked about friendship. And ironically, I guess this is my purview. For myself, and even looking like now at Juliet making all these friends, friendship is almost one of those that we almost can take out of the Bible. You know what I mean? Like marriage, yes, we should seek a godly spouse. Our parents, be nice if they were godly. Like we see that in the Bible. Fingers crossed. We hope. Yeah. But then friendship, just like that. Well, that's my choice. Like I just. Am I the only one who kind of sees that?
I think you see it as a worldly thing.
Just like Miguel said, you look for wants, you look for common interests. But yet, really, biblically, there's a lot of precedent left for biblical resetting of a relationship when it comes to a friend and what to look for and what to provide for them as a friend. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here. So if I want to be a friend to someone in a biblical sense, then I need to provide for, I need to support and even enhance those I'm friends with by giving of myself to them. And so like a field of grass, my loss is their gain. Do we get that? Like if you eat pasture, the pasture loses and the sheep gets fat. That's the imagery here we have. And so my loss is their gain. And so by taking of my life, my friend is able to improve their life. This is friendship. Came to mind, and I didn't actually write about it, but it came to mind David and Jonathan. That's exactly what we see there. Like if you look at Jonathan was next in line for the throne. He was the king's son. He had everything going for him, and he gave of his life out of a love for his friend David to build up his life. That's exactly. And so Jonathan was certainly a pastor, a Rhea to David. And so by my friends leaves fed and fulfilled by my influence. And it's not just like, on a really, really, really good day when I'm really, really, giving it all I've got and trying my hardest, then I really will prove to my friend how much I care and I'll give of myself to them. A pasture lives to be grazed upon. That's their reason for existence. It's not like on a really good day, a pasture's like, boop, grass, eat me. Like that's literally what it lives to be. It lives to be fed upon. And so this is the purpose, is the reason for its existence. And yet we're not talking about just giving your friends money. Sorry. We're not talking about giving them nuggets, more applicable to you two.
I asked her what she wants from McDonald's before I come over.
Right? We're not talking about money. We're not talking about nuggets. We're not talking about video game cheat codes. Like, if that's even a thing anymore. I may have just dated myself. Do they still use those? I don't know.
Can you cheat in games?
That used to be a thing in the 90s. But
you can? Okay.
Our resident ninja is confirming.
Clarified from the expert.
But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about giving to your friends those type of things. A pasture lives to be grazed upon, and they give a friend what the Bible reckons as a friendship. So this is what Jesus says. Henceforth, this is John 15:15. Henceforth I call you not servants, for servants knoweth not what his Lord doeth, but I have called you friends. For all things that I have heard of my Father, I have made known unto you. And so the disciples at one time, they were considered servants. They were not friends of the Lord. Ouch. Here this whole time we thought we had something going on. He's like, now you're a servant. And now he's like, oh, wait, but now Jesus calls them friends. So what made the difference? Jesus was now making known, he was expressing, he was pointing towards God's will for their lives. That was the linchpin. That was the difference between servant and friend. And so we're not Jesus. Nope. Let's get that out there.
Nope. Right.
We're not Jesus. But we are in a similar way to be a friend in the way that Jesus was a friend to the disciples. Does that make sense? And so as a friend, we should be leading and encouraging and provoking and promoting the will and the ways of God to our friends for their betterment, even if that means at our own expense. We should be supporting them in their scripture reading. We should be prompting them in their prayer time. We should be letting them graze of us as they grow in God. We should be their cheerleader in the corner of their Christianity. And so a question for you guys is this: in what ways have you guys had a friend spiritually challenge or check up on you?
I need more clarification.
You used that one already.
Darn it. In what ways? That's really a good question, because I feel as though, like when you're a Christian, you make, well, not say you make other friends who aren't Christians, like, but your closest friends, okay, are Christians, right? So just in like daily conversation with them, that's them checking up on you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think like out in the world you can have like a meaningless conversation with a friend. You know what I mean? Like, hey, see the Indian Jazz going to rain at 3:00. Okay, got to go to work. You know what I mean? It's like nothing was really exchanged there. But I feel as though Christian friendships are different, because there's like a genuine concern for each other. You know what I mean? Like in society, like I always joke about this. And they're like, hey, how you doing today? I'm here. And I always say, I didn't ask you where were you? How are you? Like I'm legitimately asking you. You know what I mean? So out in the world, like people like, hey, how are you? And then the trained response is, I'm good. How are you? Right. Like, it's never like, hey, how are you? Well, let me tell you about, you know what I mean? Like the person doesn't really care. Like they were hoping you would say,
I'm good.
I'm good. You know what I mean? But in a Christian friendship, I feel as though when someone says, how are you? They're genuinely concerned about how are you? So that's the,
I agree.
You know, the checkup on you.
I think it kind of brings up the point that, Can we admit at the table that it's a little uncomfortable? Like, I don't know if you guys, so maybe the question should have been, who have you spiritually challenged and checked up on? Maybe that's a better question. And if the answer is still the same silence I'm getting now, that tells us, and it was beautiful. But it kind of tells us like we're not really being a biblical friend per se. I agree with what you said. In conversation, I agree. We do show a care that you don't get out there. And even like Miguel said, there's a foundation starting point that you don't get out there. But I guess what I'm getting at is I feel like we don't ask each other, how are you doing in your Bible reading? We don't, how's your prayer life doing? What burdens are you struggling with? Like we don't, those are kind of like things.
Accountability.
Yeah, accountability, and just like, I'm in this with you. I'm here for you to graze on. Like I'm here to support you and better you. Like that's something that's kind of missing, I guess.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're good.
I have an example of this. So I consider Kevin a dear friend, and not you, Kevin. No, so a lot of the times, you know, we try to. You ask the question, how have you been? But I remember a very specific time, I put my foot in my mouth a lot. Like, it's just natural to be there. So I put my foot in my mouth all the time. And sometimes I don't even do it like on purpose. It's just, I hate silence, as we were talking about. So sometimes I will make a comment. And so later I kind of feel bad. But there was a situation where I put my foot in my mouth. And then Kevin said, hey, I need to talk to you. And here, I don't know if I was hyping myself up more than I should be, but I'm thinking he's going to ask me for advice on something, right? I'm about to help my friend out because I don't know, I just felt like he was going to ask me for advice. And he pulled me to the side and he challenged me. He said, hey, this was not a Christian way of doing this. And in that moment, I knew that he cared about me. I knew that he cared about me to the point where he challenged me on this. And, you know, I apologize to him for not acting like a Christian should be, but I appreciated him. It didn't feel good.
No.
And in the flesh, I wanted to tell him off.
Put your foot in his mouth.
But I really appreciated it, and that showed me how much he cared about
And
me.
I guess that's kind of my point is that is biblical friendship. I think we have more of a secular take on friendship that's not necessarily laid out in the Bible. Like that. It's not comfortable, but that shows care, and that shows that what was he doing? He was providing for you in a need, not a need that you wanted to admit you had, but he was providing there. And
but reflecting back on that moment, when I think about it, I think that what we trip over is that like we'll see a Christian friend do or say something, and we're like, "Ooh, they shouldn't have did that." Yeah. I hope they can figure that out. You know what I mean?
And do we see how that's not being a friend?
Right? Like, we don't want to like go up to them and say, "Hey." You know what I mean? Because we don't want them to go, oh, well, let me tell you about you. Right. You know, like we don't want that as the retaliation, but also like we don't want them to like we value the friendship and our limited understanding of things. We're like, man, if I correct them, they will still be my friend, but they'll be different around me. Like they'll be guarded around me because I called them out on something, so they're not going to be their natural self, if that makes sense.
I think a lot of times, so I don't know about like the other people that grew up in the same, like you, Josh and Rachel, you guys.
You, Josh, and Rachel. Who's the you?
Me. It's me.
That identity crisis
in
again.
the third person.
There we go again.
No, but so like growing up, I almost felt like talking about your prayer life and your Bible reading was almost like you didn't talk about that. Like it was almost too personal of a question. Yeah. Like you're judging them if you ask them. Right. And I feel like that was like the stigma for a really long time. So I think that it took even me into an adulthood to be able to, now me and Rachel, like if we're talking, we'll be like, I really struggled with this podcast. Like I struggled with this, and I struggled with being able to take the time this week to pray, to study, like, you know what I mean? Like, and so we'll have those types of conversations, but it takes that relearning that it's okay to talk about those things.
So follow me in this. So we're Christians, and our friendships should be Christian friendships built upon the commonality of Christ, as Miguel said. So imagine, we get to heaven, and that friendship is no longer, like we're no longer down here, we're up there. Do you realize there's not going to be anything left if your whole friendship's been built on secular, worldly things? That's all burn away. All of the things you had, all the sports teams you liked together, gone. You won't remember those anymore. All of the fishing trips you went on together, that will be out of your memory. When you get to heaven, all that will be left is your spiritual life. And so if you had a friendship built upon spiritual things, those will still exist up there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I guess that's what I'm trying to get across. I'm with Jamie. Like, it's just this stigma about bringing these things up. Like, even not just friendships. I mean, even, family and spousal, like in every way, it's just an awkward, unspoken thing. And yet that's what our lives are supposed to be built upon. And really, as Miguel and Kevin showed us, that's really how we show we care. Not necessarily saying things, but really genuinely doing the difficult things. And so the truth is that you cannot hate someone and let them graze from you. Yeah. Do you get that? Like, you can't hate someone and let them graze from you. Yeah. If you can barely tolerate a person, you're not going to let them feed off of your life. Yeah. And
so excuse me. So what it is again, like my mind always goes to like spiritual warfare, and like Satan is like, at the back front door and peeping through the window. But it's like
he's everywhere.
We are in America, particularly because I've only lived in America, I can speak of this, but we only discuss our prayer lives and things like that in church settings. Okay, in church, Bible study, Sunday school, okay? And though, like, like you two can hang out together and go to the mall or whatever, you girls do. I don't think that's it.
You mean
introvert?
You guys walk around the block together. Like,
that's still outside.
We walk around
the kitchen table. Yeah, there you go.
But like the things you talk about are probably, you're newly a mother, so you may be picking her brain for advice. You know what I mean? Like it's those things, but like in that setting. But then again, if you're at church, you know what I mean, the conversation is probably different. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what are you struggling with this week? You know what I mean? But it's not like if you're, I don't know, sitting on the couch, because you guys don't go, you guys are a poor example. Okay? So,
horrible friendship. Horrible.
We go to Cedar Point sometimes.
Not now.
But so like at Cedar Point even, like, does your prayer life and stuff, come up? Like you're talking about, again, kids, you know what I mean? Or what's going on in your lives. So
I will say that that hasn't always been a thing. Like, we haven't always had that kind of a conversation growing up, just simply because it wasn't talked about. But as adults, we do tend to have more conversations like that, and especially being more involved in the podcast and camp in like different things because those are things that we're actively working on.
So much our lives.
That's exactly
Right, yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Was I think that the more spiritual. The more a spiritual reality takes over your life, the less there is room for secular things. And so I was going to say, Rachel, like, I'm not shaming, but me and Rachel have always been close. We grew up together in the same house. I pushed her over one bed once, but besides that, me and Rachel's always been one of my best friends, and she still is. But like, you can ask her, like, whether we're in the church pew or whether we're at her house. Probably not my house, or whether we're
don't get invited.
Anywhere me and Rachel talk, our conversation is going to be the exact same.
Yeah,
it's probably going to be about church and Christianity, and it's not because we're super spiritual. It's that is our lives. We've both kind of dedicated our lives to the work of the Lord, and so that's kind of the base of our friendship.
Yeah.
And that's kind of to the point. Is it wrong to have hobbies and sports and things? No. But again, a true friend is encouraging in biblical matters, and like Jesus said, what changed from servant to friendship? Well, it was when he made known the will of the Father in their lives. And so, I don't know, may that be a challenge to each of us to just to encourage that in each other and to bring that up. And again, so as we were saying, you have to do this out of love.
Yep.
I think there can be a manufactured version of this that's unhealthy and harmful.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you do it out of love, it will be Jesus providing for them through you in a friendship. So what would it look like for each of us to live to feed our friends? What if every relationship we made it our mission to improve and support and refresh those around us? What if we valued our friends more than ourselves? What if, as the world looked upon us, it was our Bible knowledge? It was not our Bible knowledge. It wasn't our dress code. It wasn't our pro stance or our anti stance that drew their attention. But what if the world looked at us and they knew that we were Christians? How? Because of our love. That's what Jesus says at John 13:35. It never ceases to amaze me that that's how Jesus says you'll be known. The world will know you by your love for one another. And yet in Christianity, love for one another is exactly what we've gotten rid of. And so Jesus says that should be what defines you guys. So
yeah, that's a great point. I don't know why I become so talkative lately, but like the last 5 minutes, I feel like I have a lot to say. But like that's a great example of what you just said. So but then again, like we are, I don't know, conditioned and confined to keep that in certain settings. You know what I mean? Like, can we go to work tomorrow? You know what I mean? And talk to someone about their faith. You know what I mean? It's like, because like I've come to like this past week and talking to people, like I'm like digging in and I'm like, okay, like I need to talk to this person about God. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you know, hey, and like my thought is, based on the way they're acting and everything, this is going to be like a tough one. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like, hey, do you believe in God? And they're like, well, yeah, I believe in God. And then like the whole conversation, and I'm like, oh, that wasn't as...
So maybe this is a lot more of a problem than I thought. Maybe this isn't just a friendship problem. Maybe this is just we're more worldly beings than we are spiritual beings. So I was thinking, Brother Miguel's our resident evangelistic expirinato. I don't know. I just made it up off the top of my head. It was awful.
That was good.
I don't know if expirinato is
I'm going to call you that for now on.
aficionado?
On your business
on Scrabble.
cards.
Scrabble.
Put in the back of the 3 circles.
But what I was thinking was, you know, like Kevin said, we do very much, it's okay to talk to Rachel about God, but I'm not going to talk to the lady in the drive-thru at McDonald's about God because...
She got my order wrong.
But then I was thinking about John, like, so Jesus walks up to a random woman at a well and just starts telling her, you got husbands you shouldn't. And you got, like, just, he was not padding the conversation. And, like, you see this over and over and over. Like, he was so willing to have the difficult conversations. And he's our model. Like, a Christian is a Christ-like person. And so is it, you know, in the context of friendship, we're not willing, or is it that we're just not willing to do the difficult thing, to follow his example, to put ourselves out there because we're more worried about how we look in a worldly sense than a heavenly sense.
I was recently watching sports thing with it, and one guy was saying about how athletes today, the coaches don't have those hard conversations with them. They like pamper them. You know what I mean? So in relation to this, it's like to the rest of the world, we need to have those hard conversations, like because by pampering them, we're kind of doing exactly what we're not supposed to do. Like what we're doing. Exactly. We're like, God said go. Right. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we're gonna go, but you know, when we get there, we know what to do. You know what I mean? But just the, you know, it's a tough conversation, but I think it's tough because we make it tough. You know what I mean? I feel as though if you invite someone to church and then they show up, they're like, okay, I got you, like on my home turf. We can talk about this. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Get them.
So,
you got husbands, you should.
But you know, like if you like anywhere, you know, like on break at work, you know what I mean? Like that's where we're called out to go. We're not sent here to like, okay, gather everyone in the church and then tell them about Jesus. We're told to go, and no matter where you are. You know, you should be that person.
So the thing is that, and it stings to think about it, but there's only two scenarios why you're not doing this. You either think it's not that important, that Jesus isn't that big of a deal, that God isn't a big deal, or you are willing to let somebody die in hell.
Which is the most unloving thing anyone can ever do. Yeah.
So
and neither's a great option. Like that's lose-lose.
Like it's either, like Christianity isn't that big of a deal, or you're just willing to let that person die and go to hell.
So the thing about it is like God, you know, has a plan for your life, as we learned. Okay, so that person that you're not talking to, like God literally like was like, okay, so Jamie, I need you to connect with that person, and like you're talking to him, and God's like.
Hello. I'm the one who sent you here.
Exactly. Like I set up this meeting, Jamie. You're supposed to.
And apply that to. Oh, is it John 10? Is it John? I'm getting my numbers mixed up. I think it's John 10, where the one with the will. It's either 4 or 10. I get the two mixed up.
I think it's 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
4 before 10. Okay. I always get those two mixed up. 10 is life more abundantly. 4 is woman at the well. So imagine that though. Jesus goes to the well. This woman shows up, and he was sent there for that conversation, and he starts talking about the weather.
Yeah.
And he starts talking about like his favorite sports team. It's round.
Do you ever think that you walk up to them and God's just like, now he's going to do it. Oh, wait, maybe he's going to bring it. Nope, you didn't bring it back around. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I have a feeling you make God do this a lot.
But like, so a lot of times we don't even. I know. So you invite me and Miguel to the same thing. But so like a lot of times like we don't even realize it until after the fact. You know what I mean? It's like the person's got in their car and drove away, and we're like, oh. God, that was you know.
That's why I was here.
I'll talk to him next time. You know what I mean? And
then you don't.
There's this poem that really stood out to me. It stood out to me that I forgot like word for word what it said. But it really stood out to me because it was a neighbor talking. It was a poem. It was a neighbor talking to his neighbor, and he said, "You told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared about me. You know, we lived our whole life together, but now I'm here before God, and you never told me about him." And that really stood out to me to the point where it was, and I still struggle with this, where, you know, I'll say hi to my neighbor, but it's like, well, when do I share the gospel with him? And as you call me the
evangelistic aficionado.
Aficionado, right?
I think I actually said experienato, which
You
is
did.
Experienato. But
I can experience that.
it's still uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not supposed to be comfortable. And I tell this, you know, to the people that I share with. If you're waiting to be comfortable before you share the gospel, you're going to be waiting for a long time. You can be confident in the message because it's not your message, but you shouldn't wait to be comfortable. Otherwise, you're just going to be twiddling your thumbs.
I think it's it is circulated around several years ago, but Penn from Penn and Teller, Gillette, is that his last name? Penn Gillette? I might have just made that up.
I know his last name is Teller.
Penn Teller. You know who I'm talking about though? Did you see the video? It circulated several years ago. He did a selfie video. And he's an atheist, but he basically was saying, if you believe God is real, and if you believe heaven is a real place, and if you believe I'm going to die and go there, the most unloving thing you could ever do is not tell me that. And like Christians were sharing this galore because it's very convicting, and yet that's exactly the truth. How much do you have to hate someone not to tell them that? And it's the same in the Christian life. How much do you have to hate someone you're supposed to be friends with to not check on what matters most, their soul? How is your soul doing?
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be labeled as that radical Christian, that
Or
crazy...
as the Bible calls them, Christian. Actually, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
like
right.
radical, and that there's just
yeah.
one type.
But we don't want to be related to, because our flesh is telling us, like, if you talk about Jesus, they're not going to invite you to the, you know, like that's what our flesh, like, our flesh, shh, no, don't let that out. You know what I mean?
They make really good appetizers. We want to get invited.
Exactly. So, you know, and back to relationships, you know what I mean? So, I mean, you guys are all married and been out of the game for years, but
For sure.
We're so old, guys.
and I'm the oldest one here. But no, but like, even like I you know, see this is that, like, you know, someone meets someone and they're interested in them, you know what I mean? And if you're a Christian and you meet someone and you like, oh, that might be that's the next conversation you need to have.
Yeah.
Okay. But yet it's like kind of shoved aside until like they're talking about marriage and then it comes up.
Oh.
Like,
you don't believe in God? That may be a problem.
Exactly.
I like we joke, but do we realize how common that is? So we were supposed to talk about being unequally yoked. I realized about 2 sentences in that this is the wrong script. But on the other script that we're not using, we were going to talk about being unequally yoked.
I think they told you this about the title. You just didn't get the
I
hint.
know, I am thick-skulled. But so the Bible says to not be unequally yoked with an unbeliever. It goes on to say, you know, what does Christ have to do with Beelzebub, and what does non-believers have to light with darkness, and all the opposites? What do they have to do with one another? And so the point is not to be unequally yoked. So that actually it ties back to the book of Leviticus, where they say don't put a donkey and an ox in the same, you know, wooden yoke to pull farm equipment. Why? Well, because if you know anything about those two animals, they don't work well together. Yeah. They have opposite mindsets, opposite ways of doing things, opposite attitudes. They will not work together. They'll never accomplish the work. And so God says in the Word, don't do that for yourselves. Don't put yourself in a yoke with a donkey. Don't do it with the ox.
He didn't use the King James version.
That's right. So a lot of times we put that in a dating context,
Right, yes,
or marriage context,
yes.
and absolutely that's where it applies. I think that's even contextually where it is he's talking about marriage, and then it goes into that. But what I'd like to challenge is kind of like Miguel said in his testimony, that should apply to your friendships. Yeah. That should really apply in every relationship endeavor you have. Consider who you're yoked with, because what's going to happen. So a friendship biblically in the Old Testament is someone who provides to someone else. So what happens when you're trying to provide for them what they need spiritually, but they're a non-believer? Do you see how that's complete setup for failure? But you can't provide what they need. It's like if you were to put a lion in a field of grass and tell him to go eat. You're of no benefit to him. He does not want what you have to offer. He does not want what you're trying to provide.
Okay, I noticed that you looked at Kevin as a lion and me as a donkey.
Yeah.
You noticed that? I thought you couldn't see that.
I saw that.
but also like don't take what Josh is saying wrong, because but he's right. But also by that same token is that, like, if you come across a non-believer, okay, you should still love them and still give them the word. I think where we get it twisted often is that we're like, oh, a non-believer, I must go save them. Right. And turn them to Christ. I'm going to change their heart. And because we can't do that, we're setting ourselves up for failure, because God is the one who does it. All we're asked to do is like, hey, you know, in short terms, like, hey, let me tell you about Jesus. Okay. And whether they their reaction to what you tell them is totally has nothing to do with you, but you did your part by telling them. Yeah. You know, so don't think that just because you're a lion and someone's a donkey that you shouldn't. I tried to say it with a straight face.
So I think,
maybe I shouldn't have asked to come.
So I think that where the real problem lies is that you're trying to be in their pasture.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you
very wisely spoken.
Yeah.
Owl.
Ooh.
You.
Oh, you. No, so I think that's the thing is like you're going to their pasture and you're trying to feed off of them and they're not going to fulfill. You're going to nibble and be like, this, I mean, I like being here, but it's not really helping me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And yet what usually happens is we eat and we're like, oh, it's not bad. And then eventually they overtake us in a very ungodly, negative way. And that's what the Bible's warning against is it never, ever goes the other way.
Yeah, no.
Never, ever. I mean, even growing up, Rachel can attest this, how many people get into those relationships and they're like, yeah, but I'll be the one time it works. I'll be the one time that... No, God knows what he's talking about.
Like that's the thing. Like we can't, like in a friendship, relationship, marriage, whatever. Any kind of ship you're in, it is your responsibility to tell them about God, Christ. That's your responsibility, and that is it. Okay, how they receive it, how they respond to it, and what happens after that. You know, you can pray for them and everything. But you can't like stay in their pasture. You kind of have to go back to your pasture, and hopefully, you know, one day while you're grazing, or if you're a lion, you're eating like some type of deer. You know, and they come over and join you, and you're like, hey,
we're just going all kinds of,
you know. So like
So I
they
think
come into your pasture, and you're like, hey.
So I think what is where we kind of lack in maybe in just in the Western world or the world in general is that love has nothing to do with friendship necessarily. So I have a relationship with Rachel. This is like my friendship. This is my accountability. This is my person I go to. That does not mean that my prior coworkers, my whatever, those people I don't have relationships with. I love them, but I'm not going to them for what I'm going here.
There's no
for.
common skin in the game.
Yes.
There's no pasture grazing among each other.
Yes.
Though we're cordial, though I love them and I truly desire the best for them, I'm not giving them my pastures and I'm not eating their pastures.
Because like Jesus didn't know that woman. Well, he knew the woman, but like he wasn't his friend.
Right.
But he loved her to the point where he was like, you need to be better. You need to come follow me. Like, you know what I mean? And so I think that's where we get misplaced is that we assume that you have to love someone, you have to have a relationship necessarily like that. And you don't. You can go and be who you're supposed to be through Christ in their lives, but not bank on them for the things that you're getting through your Christian friends.
Right.
And so this is why this topic of relationships really spoke out to me. And as I was listening to the different conversations, the marriage and, you know, as I was listening to, the one thing that came to my mind is there's going to be a lot of, I don't know if it's for the youth, right? But you're going to be going into a new school. You're going to be going into, say, college, or you're going to be going off and you're going to need a friend, whether you're an introvert or not. I think we made it pretty clear that everybody needs a friend. We weren't created to be alone. As much as we like to be alone, we were not created for that, right? So as you're looking for someone, right, as you're praying, hopefully you're bringing it to the Lord. Lord, place someone in life. And that was me, right? But the thing that I was searching for is someone that I had things in common with. And the Lord showed me that what I should be looking for is that Christ was in common. And so this is what I noticed in a pattern of friends that I have created, right? That the material things, there's nothing wrong with those things, right? But it always comes back to Christ.
Yes.
And me and Amanda were having this conversation. Let's just say our best friends, right? If they stopped attending church, like if they say they completely left the faith, abandoned the faith, it would be really hard for us to continue to be friends. Not because we don't love them, right? But because if we're not growing together in Christ, it's going to make it really, really difficult. And so Kevin, I think Kevin has shared his testimony here before where he came to Christ last year or 2 years ago now, right? 2 years ago. In 21? Yeah, in 21, right?
Yeah.
And so Kevin and I began a friendship, but it was based on Christ. And I have nothing in common with Kevin outside of Christianity. And that is the biggest thing that we have in common, right? But as I kept sharing with him Christ, I noticed that Kevin kept coming back. He kept coming back to want to know more about Christ, right? So God placed Kevin in my life, and I shared with him what was given to me. And so when you're looking for a friend, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to look for a Christian friend, right? You might find someone in college, or you might find someone who is worldly. And that doesn't mean for you to be worldly, right? You continue to act like a Christian, but if that person keeps coming back and they you keep sharing Christ with them, that is what we call a person of peace.
Yeah.
They want to know more.
Yeah.
And you continue to do that. And God may make your best friend be someone who
Right.
began worldly, but you led them to Christ.
Yeah.
They're continuing to grow in Christ. And I can honestly attest to this as someone who has seen my best friend, grow in Christ. That is one of the biggest blessings that I have.
Yeah.
Just to see him, and this is gonna sound kind of creepy, right? But sometimes I stand in the back, like when Jonah's crying or something, I stand in the back, and I happen to glance over there, and just to see them raising their hands in worship brings a joy to me that I would have never thought. You know what? I would have never thought about that.
Yeah.
But seeing them worship, it's a great joy, and I think that's what we should be looking for. Like I said, as you're going to a new school, as you're growing in life, what are you looking for? What are you looking for?
Yeah. What I think we talked about it 2 weeks ago, but define the relationship. Like, what are you getting into this for? And I think that's kind of what Miguel's talking about. If you were to pick a friend based on basketball, and you're both on a team, and you both play, and you both go to a basketball camp, and then your friend breaks their leg and is in a wheelchair the rest of their life and can't play basketball. Well, all of a sudden there's a crippling to your relationship because what you had a common thing is no longer. But if we use Christ and our faith as a foundation, suddenly there's an eternal thing to always base on. And like Miguel said, I'm encouraging my best friend to grow in the faith. They're encouraging me to grow in the faith. We grow mutually, and it can go on forever until, forever.
I think if you just keep God, and this is any relationship, marriage, friendship, keep God as the focal point. You know what I mean? If you're both focused on God, okay, then all the other stuff will, come together. I think.
Yep. Well, any last thoughts?
Moo.
Said the donkey, yes. So today's considerable quote is from J.C. Ryle, and he says this: "Let us seek friends that will stir up our prayers, our Bible reading, our use of time, and our salvation." Today's feature content, it's an oldie. This is that's an old song.
That's a really
That's
old
"Friend
one.
of God" by Felix Craig and Dean. I'm showing my age there. So go listen to that song. Today's Charge Up Challenge. So I like to challenge you to write a note to a friend. Be intentional in this note and write encouraging things to them. Encourage them in their faith and their walk with God. And then commit to your friend in this letter that you'll be praying for them and you'll be there to support them. And I want to actually challenge you to give that letter. This is about the most uncomfortable thing you could do. This is almost worse than this is uncomfortable. But this is literally what we mean by being a pastor, being a friend, being someone to graze upon. Let's break this stigma of we can't talk about spiritual things even though we're spiritual beings.
That's such a trap.
So, trivia question. So last week the answer was B, 21 billion, which is mind blowing. That's how much Americans, or I guess
That's how
Americans,
much I've spent at McDonald's at this point.
people spend on Valentine's Day every year. $21 billion. My goodness, that is a lot of chalk hearts. So to this week's question is this: how many times is the word friend found in the Bible? A, 99, B, 158, C, 268, or D, 589? Tune in next week. We'll give you the answer to that question, or make sure to comment your answer below. We'd love to hear that. So next week, I'm actually really excited. So this is the first time we've ever done this, but next week we're starting a not so brand new series because we're actually bringing back last year's series of Nuggets for Knowledge. Which was our March series last year. I really enjoyed that. That was one of our most tuned in series. So we're really excited. Miguel will be back at some point for that, right?
I will.
It's like,
I'll try not to offend as much next time. So anyhow, make sure to comment, like, share, subscribe below. Be sure to appreciate you being here. Until next time, we'll see you.
Bye, guys.
Bye. I'll tell you a funny story. So we used to live in Texas, and we used to live not really at the border, but I mean we actually not even close to the border. But there was one of my biggest pet peeves is when like somebody who comes and speaks to me in Spanish, like assuming that I don't speak English.
Yeah.
So this white man came in there with his son, and he spoke to me in Spanish. And he spoke really good Spanish, but still, like, I was offended.
Do you understand what he said?
Yeah. It was real good. I was working in the tire lube in the Walmart, and he asked me for a tire size, so I answered him in English.
Yeah.
Because, you're not going to school me. I speak English, and I speak it very well. And so he looked at me, and so he asked me again in Spanish, do you have this tire size?
He didn't speak English.
He was a Mennonite that only spoke German and Spanish. So his son
So here you are thinking he's being presumptuous, and you're the presumptuous one. It's like when you get in the wrong person's car. I can relate to this.
You've heard that story, have you not?
Oh yeah.